Hi folks, welcome back to Florida Tips for Brits, or welcome if you're finding me for the first time. My name is Andrew, and in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through the application process for an ESTA, or the Electronic System for Travel Authorization. Basically, the little visa waiver thing that you're going to need if you want to go on holiday to Orlando to visit Mickey Mouse or Universal or whatever. So we're just going to get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way, and then we'll get straight into filling in the form. Okay, so just before we get into filling out the form, I'll just give you a little bit of information on what an ESTA actually is. So an ESTA, as I said earlier, stands for Electronic System of Travel Authorization, and it is basically a visa waiver. So it's not a visa. It's important to note that they are different things, but it works in place of a visa for people wanting to visit the USA via sea or air. So aeroplane or boat, it's an ESTA you're going to need. If you're visiting via a land border, so maybe you're coming in from via Canada or something like that, it's a different form you need. This one's not going to help you. But if you're coming in by a cruise ship or you're flying in on an aeroplane, the ESTA is what you want. So who is the ESTA for? Well, the ESTA basically is for absolutely every person that's traveling in your party to the United States. So it doesn't matter if they're really old or really young. If they're traveling into the United States by boat or by aeroplane, they're going to need an ESTA or they're going to need a visa, because without those, you ain't getting in. It's important to note that there are certain limitations to an ESTA, such as the length of stay, where you can only stay up to a maximum of 90 days on an ESTA, whereas with a visa, I believe you can stay up to 6 months in a 12-month period, or 180 days. So if you need to stay for longer, you're probably going to need to get a visa, but for most people, and for holiday purposes, 90 days is most likely going to be long enough. So again, the ESTA, it's cheaper, it's quicker, I'd recommend you do an ESTA. Next thing is, where should you go to fill it in? Well, you should go to the CBP's official website, and I'll give you the address for that a little bit later on, and I'm going to put it in the description down below as well. This is the only website you should be visiting to fill in this documentation, and it literally says in the top corner that it is the official website. Because there's lots of people online who will offer to fill in an ESTA for you and charge you well over the odds. Which brings me on nicely to, well, how much does an ESTA cost? An ESTA is going to cost you $21 per person, and they do last for 2 years or until your passport expires, whichever comes sooner. Okay, next thing is, what information are you going to need to actually fill in your ESTA? Well, most of it you're going to know, because it's asking things like your name and, you know, what you do for a living and where you live and things like that. The rest of the information can pretty much be found on your passport. There is going to be a section on there for where you're staying when you visit the United States, but we'll get into that a little bit more when we go through the form in just a minute. And the last piece of housekeeping I do just want to touch on is when you should actually go ahead and apply for your ESTA, and the answer is as soon as possible. I've just filled out my ESTA. I haven't got anything booked yet, but I filled it in already, because now I know I'm approved, I'm more confident I can go ahead and book my stay. A lot of people kind of leave the ESTA to an afterthought, and they've got, you know, entire holidays riding on this approval, and it isn't guaranteed. And if you do get knocked back, the chances of you getting it overturned are extremely slim, and most likely what you'll end up having to do is make an appointment to go and visit the embassy in London and have a visa approved for you to travel, hopefully. The problem is with this, visa appointments can be running like 9 or 12 months in the future. So if you've got a holiday coming up next month or something, that's really not going to help you out. So rather than run the risk of having to kind of cancel your plans and scupper your holiday, before you've got anything booked, go ahead, get everybody together, make sure the passports are valid for your travel, make sure everybody's passports aren't going to be changed between now and when you travel, and just pay the $21 each and get the ESTAs approved, because once you've got them in hand, you can kind of book with a bit more confidence. So I think that's just generally a really good rule of thumb. So that's all the housekeeping out of the way. Let's get into the form and hopefully get you approved and on your way to the United States. All right then, folks. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we're on the right website for filling in this ESTA. Now, if the page you are on looks like this, there's a good chance you're in the right place. But if you do need to check, look in the top left-hand corner and you will see that it literally says the official website of the Department of Homeland Security, along with this web address. Now, that is the actual web address, the one that I've put in the link in the description below, or in the description below. That is the proper website. Use this website. Don't use any others, because they will just overcharge you for effectively the same service. So we're on the right website. So actually, if you just scroll down a little bit on this page here, it does actually tell you everything you're going to need and all of the people who need to apply. So if you can't remember the details from this video, it is actually just there on the website for you as well. So you should be covered. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to decide whether you're doing a new application for an individual or for a group. In this case, we're going to be doing an individual application. Now, on the next screen, you are going to be given a couple of disclaimers that you do have to agree to. Otherwise, you basically can't complete your ESTA and you'll have to go ahead and get a visa. So we're going to agree to these and just move on to the next bit. So on this next page, you'll see that there is a bar running across the top, which gives you an indication of where you are in the application process. You'll see we've filled in the disclaimers, so the little nodule there has turned green, and we're currently on applicant information, so that's currently blue, and the future ones are all just white. Now, these will obviously update as we go through the process, but it just gives you an idea of how far along you are when it comes to actually completing this form. And you'll see that the last thing on this list is actually paying for the ESTA. So once you get to that page where you do pay, that is going to be the final part of the puzzle. Now, just taking a look at this page here, you'll see that it asks you for all kinds of information regarding your family name, your first given name, gender, things like that. And it also asks you to upload a picture of your passport or upload your passport to the website. Now, in the past, you have been able to kind of opt out of uploading your passport and just manually fill in all the information. But I've done a couple of ESTAs very recently, like within the last few days, and both times it's told me that I'm not allowed to put in the information myself and that I do have to upload a picture of the passport. So just expect to be asked to upload a picture of your passport. And then what happens is it actually populates a lot of that information that they're asking for on the left-hand side there. It'll do it from that photograph of your passport. So in my case, when I took a photo, it put in my family name, my first given name, and my middle name. That's very important. If you've got a middle name and it appears on your passport, it has to go on your ESTA. If you've got a middle name but it's not on your passport, don't put it on your ESTA. Rule of thumb here, if it's on your passport, it goes on your ESTA, and if it isn't, it doesn't. So just play by those rules and we should be good to go. Obviously, you can put in your date of birth, your city of birth. Now, this is literally what it says on your actual passport. So if it says that you were born in Birmingham, then put Birmingham. If it says you were born in Manchester, put Manchester. If it says you were born in Trafford, put Trafford. So you literally put exactly what it says on your passport under the city of birth. Country of birth, in my case, was UK, Great Britain. My passport number, this was already populated for me from the photograph. Country of citizenship, again, UK citizen. National identification number, we don't have one of those. Date of issuance, now it didn't fill this in for me, so I just had to put it in myself here, but you'll just put in what date your passport was issued to you. The issuing country, so in my case, again, it was United Kingdom. And then at the bottom there, you see personal identification number, we didn't fill that in. And it says expiration date, so I just put the expiration date in there. Now, as we scroll down the page, you'll see the question that says other citizenship or nationality. So are you now a citizen or national of any other country? So in my case, and in most people's cases, that will be no. Have you been a citizen or national of any other country? So at any point in the past, if you have, you need to say yes. But obviously, in my case, I did say no. And now it does say you do need to put in an email address and confirm your email address. Now, this is quite important because, well, it's vital actually that you put in a valid email address that you've got access to, because what they will do next is they will actually email you a PIN number to allow you to continue the application. So before you're even allowed to continue the application, they have to verify that that email address is legitimate and that you are who you say you are, and they will send you a PIN number very, very quickly, and then you can come straight back to this page and put in your PIN number and continue your application. So make sure you're using an email address that is valid and that you do have access to. That'll then bring you onto the next screen where you do have to enter some more personal information. So this is asking things like, the first question there you can see, it says, are you known by any other names or aliases? Now, for the vast majority of people, the answer to this is always going to be no. It's not talking about married names or maiden names or nicknames. It's talking about other professional names. So, for example, actors or musical artists who basically, for example, Alice Cooper, whose name is actually Vincent Furnier. you know, they're known by Alice Cooper, but that's not actually their name. So unless you're Alice Cooper or Michael Caine, there's another one. Michael Caine's another one I can think off the top of my case. Nicolas Cage, that's not actually his name. You know, things like that. Then the answer to this is going to be no. So then the next question says, have you ever been issued a passport or national identity card for travel by any other country? So obviously answer this yes or no. In my case, it was no. Now below this, it does ask for your contact information. So you do have to put in your address. Now this is the address that you're living at right now at the moment in time that you're filling in this application. So just simply add your address there. If you're unsure of which address, part of the address to put on which line, if you hover over the address line where it says address line 1, address line 2, it actually gives you an explanation of what they expect there. So address line 1's like house number and street, then address line 2's like, I think it's like if it's like a building or something like that, and then there's like apartment, and then it's city and province or state or whatever, and then finally you put in your country. Then it will ask you for a telephone number and a country code. So put in a telephone number there that's a valid telephone number for you. I use my home phone, but you could use a mobile phone, and obviously select the country code as being, in my case, it was United Kingdom, so it was +44 for the telephone number. Now, the next section you're going to see underneath all this is going to be for social media. Now, this is purely optional. So my advice to you here, unless you've got some particular reason to fill it in, is if something says it's optional, is just to scroll past it. Don't touch it. Just keep on moving, unless you really, really, really feel the need to tell them all of your social media handles and stuff, because it is completely optional. So I just scrolled on by, and I think most people do, to be fair. The next thing you're going to see is the GE membership. Now, this is the Global Entry program. So if you're a member of Global Entry, just say I'm a member of Global Entry. They'll probably ask you for some credentials or what have you. I am not, so I just said I'm not, and I moved on. And then the next information it wants to see is it wanted me to enter my parents' names, which I did. So I just popped in my parents' names, and jobs are good. And next thing, we're talking about employment information. Now, it asks you, do you have a current or previous employer? Now, you simply answer yes to this, and then it'll say, well, what do you do for a living or whatever. In my case, I was self-employed, and I said what I did for a living, my position within the company, etc. And it really is as simple as that. You just literally put in what you do for a living. So if you're self-employed, just put it'll give you an option to put self-employed. Other than that, you can probably find something appropriate, and you can just basically free type your job title and stuff. It'll ask you what the address of your employer is. So I just use I guess in a lot of cases that might be like a head office or something like that. But I guess you could just, if you have a particular building that you work in, you could use that as well. So just pop in your employment information and then on to the next page. I do want to say as well, you will notice before we just move on to the next page, you will notice it does say save and exit in the bottom corner there. If you get called away or you get find that you haven't got time to complete this, you can save and exit the application and revisit it later. Although I would recommend, honestly, just setting aside enough time to get this finished in one go, because then it's over and done with, and you can just book your holiday and get on with your life, can't you? Okay then, so on the next page, it is going to talk about travel information. So it'll say things like, is your travel to the US occurring in transit to another country? So if you are just going to Florida on holiday, the answer here is no, because your final destination is Florida. But if you were, say, flying to Orlando or Miami, say, and then on to Mexico, then the answer would be yes. And it would probably ask you, well, where are you going after that or whatever. But for now, for our purposes, going to Orlando, your answer is going to be, is it occurring in transit to another country? No, it isn't, because it's your final destination. Then just scroll down a little bit further, and it'll ask you for a US point of contact information. Now, this is if you kind of, let's say you're meeting friends, maybe you're staying at a friend's house or a business associate or something like that, you could put some contact information in there. However, most people, when they're going on holiday, won't necessarily have anybody to contact in the States. So you can just put unknown for this as your point of contact information. If you hover over where it says name and the asterisk, it will say, enter the name of the person or persons that you're meeting up with or whatever, or put unknown. And when you hover over the address, it says enter the address or put unknown. So if you don't know where you're going, because like me, you didn't have anything booked yet, you'll find this is a recurring theme as we go through this. You can just put unknown for this. So I just simply filled in for US point of contact because I haven't got one. I just put unknown. And just moved on. And then it says phone number. If you don't have a phone number for somebody, you can just put zeros. So I just put a bunch of zeros in there, and it was fine. It accepted it, and we just moved on. Now, this next bit here, it does say address while in the US. Now, same deal as the point of contact. If you know where you're going, because let's say you have a home, like a holiday home that you go to, or the same villa that you visit regularly, or you know where you're going because you've already booked your travel before doing your ESTA, which is not recommended, but let's say you did, and you knew exactly where you were going, and you were staying at, for example, I don't know, the Grand Floridian, you can quite easily just put in the Grand Floridian's address there. For everything else, if you don't know where you're going, again, you can just put unknown, and it's absolutely fine. It's a bit of an odd question, this one. I'm not sure why it's actually on the ESTA, because if you remember me earlier saying that they lasted for 2 years, it's extremely unlikely that you're going to travel to exactly the same destination every single time, unless you have a home there or something like that. Most people are going on holiday, they stay in different hotels each time, and it changes, but you do need to put something in there. If you know where you're going, just put in where you're going first. Let's say even if you're on like a multi-stay, you're staying at 2 or 3 different hotels because you're moving around a bit, just put the first address of the first hotel. Or you can just put unknown and just move on. Now, emergency contact information in or outside of the US, again, you can just put in whoever you like there for your emergency contact information. Okay, so then you're going to move on to the next bit, which is actually going to be the eligibility questions. Now, this is a bunch of questions, and the long and short of it is, if you have to answer yes to any of these questions, then you are not going to get approved for an ESTA. It's not going to happen. They will deny your request for an ESTA. You are going to be looking at a visa. So, however, that's not me suggesting that you lie. Do not lie on this. Answer honestly, but read the questions and just answer honestly. But I will warn you now, if you do have to answer yes to any of this, then you are going to find yourself having to apply for a visa, because the ESTA is not going to be for you. So there's a bunch of questions on there. There's fun ones like, have you ever been a spy, and things like that. But, just be careful when you're doing this as well, because if you're using the old scroll wheel to scroll up and down, make sure that something that you've selected as no doesn't get flipped into a yes. All right. Okay. So once you've done that, we're almost done now. And at the bottom, you are going to get to the waiver of rights. Now, you will need to tick either 1 or 2 boxes here, depending on who you're filling it in for. Now, if you're a person, an individual filling a form in for yourself, you would just click the top box that says certification, I, the applicant, hereby, etc. Now, if you're filling it in for a kid or something like that, like I did one for my daughter recently, I would have to tick the top box to say that I have filled it in truthfully, and the bottom box to say that I've told her the answers I've put to the questions and she agrees that everything's right. So we'd both have to tick it, and from there you just say next. So that's going to bring you to this next page, which is all about reviewing your application. Now here you'll get a chance to go through each section individually and approve what you've done, kind of confirm it. So you'll get a chance to see all of the information you've entered so far, double check it, really take your time with this, make sure everything's looking right. And as and when you feel that section, you've checked it and you're happy with it, just click confirm and do that. Repeat until you've basically gone through every section and you're happy with everything, and you've got a bunch of green reviewed ticks there. Now again, here at the end it will say, for verification purposes, re-enter the following information as shown as on the ESTA eligible passport, and it'll ask you once again to manually input your passport number, issuing country, family name, date of birth. Once you've done that, you can hit next. And that's it. The form is basically done, and all you need to do now is to pay. Now, it does say here it's going to cost you $21 per application. Again, if this number here at this point is more or less than $21, you are on the wrong website as of me recording this video, which is the 4th of September 2023. So it should be $21, no more, no less. So here you'll see this is an older example on the screen here because it says it was $14. That's what it used to be before they put it up to $21 last year. And basically, it'll give you a date that your payment's due by. I just usually pay straight away, but you can come back and pay later if you want. You pay your money, and then the status there that says unpaid, that'll change to authorization pending. And then you'll be informed that you have got to wait anything up to 72 hours for your ESTA to be confirmed. The next news, you should get an email once they've updated your status. So you'll get an email to your chosen email address that'll say your status has changed, and then you can go back in, check on where it got up to, and hopefully that change has been an approval. If it's a denial, then unfortunately you are going to be looking at getting a visa instead. So there you go. Hopefully you found this video helpful and you've been able to successfully complete your ESTA, and you're now just looking forward to getting to the States and hopefully enjoying some of that lovely Florida weather. Thanks so much for watching this video. Leave us a like and subscribe on your way out if you want to see more videos like this. I'll see you next time.